Service Commission has postponed the UPSC Civil Services Prelims Exam 2020 that was to be conducted on May 31st. The Commission has announced that the new exam dates will be released after May 20th after UPSC analyzes the COVID-19 situation. The lockdown imposed has been extended by a fortnight, which has made UPSC come up with such a decision. Meanwhile, the Staff Selection Commission recently informed that the fresh dates of postponed exams will be released only after the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions are lifted completely from the country. New dates of SSC Exam 2020 will be out for SSC CHSL, SSC Junior Engineer and Stenographer exams that were to be held in the months when the lockdown was imposed. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the way forward for competitive exams. Joining me on the program today are A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard, P.S. Ravindran, Director, Vajiram and Ravi IAS, and S.C. Tripathi, former Secretary, HRD Ministry. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Ravindran, let me begin the program with you. Let's first try and understand and analyze the kind of impact that the lockdowns have had on competitive exams and on the rhythm and the preparations of students and those aspirants as well.
Well, we can see the effect of the COVID-19 on the competitive exams and the coaching institutes in a twofold manner. The first effect is that the new changes which have been brought about by COVID-19 for the very first time, like social distancing and lockdown, which had never been experienced by the coaching centers and the competitive exams. Whereas the second type of impact is that the COVID-19 has started speeding up the ongoing changes which had already been present in the society. For example, that there are clusters of coaching centers spread over the country. For example, the Kota in Rajasthan is known for the IIT coaching. The old Rajendra Nagar in New Delhi is known for the IAS coaching. And the Lakshmi Nagar in Delhi is known for the CA coaching. So there was the concentration of coaching centers in certain parts of the country, and the trend had been that the students traveling to the coaching centers. However, that in the last 3-4 years, that these conglomerates, they had reached a point of that satiation and beyond which they could not take anymore. Therefore, now that the coaching institutes have started moving more towards the students rather than the students moving towards this, we see a trend of decentralization of the coaching clusters. And this process now has been accelerated because of the COVID-19's impact. The second impact that I see is that what is known as the new term blended learning that has gained momentum. There are two major types of learning. The one is the traditional classroom coaching, and the second is the online teaching that is new. There has been attempts made by each of these two systems to integrate the benefits conferred by the other system so as to make the learning more wholesome for the students. And this process, the online process, getting integrated with the traditional classroom, these are the major changes that I see. However, these changes are going to be permanent or not is a new question which only time can answer. But in my opinion, the changes which have been part of the society will come. For example, that the Spanish flu, which broke out in 1918 and lasted till 1920, does not have any impact upon the current society. So in fact that similarly, that we do not know whether the new changes which have been brought about by the COVID-19 for the very first time are going to last forever. Though the present generation will ever remember the COVID-19's impact, but we do not know what the coming generations will react to this situation.
Okay.
But the ongoing changes will continue.
Okay, the ongoing changes will continue. Yes. Change is going to be a constant is what you're suggesting. Let me take the points that you're making forward as well. Let me bring in Mr. Tripathi now. Mr. Tripathi, what do you believe is the most challenging aspect of organizing examinations of such mammoth magnitudes?
See the numbers, the diversity, the question papers to be set up for so many subjects, and organizing all invigilators, getting question papers, distributed in time. Now, of course, the systems have changed because very often question papers used to get leaked, but now they are sent by email just about half an hour before the exam are to begin. So, in this process, and of course, after writing the exam, then getting the copies examined by teachers, then moderating, because there are so many subjects and each subject has its own speciality. So how do you equate somebody doing mathematics and writing all questions perfectly with somebody studying Sanskrit or geography or English literature and also answering very well? So moderation is also very important. All these factors are there. But the way our exams are held and conducted, I thought, of course, coronavirus has dislocated life. So, what to say of conducting exams and coaching by the coaching centers? But the way exams are conducted, I think, given the possibility of coronavirus epidemic continuing for several months, they could be organized, but more halls, more invigilators, more people would be required, and it could be conducted with social distancing. And then, of course, other precautionary measures would have to be taken. So, this possibility we should not rule out, even after a month or 2 months, whenever the exams are to be conducted.
Okay, all right, Mr. Bhattacharya. So, considering that social distancing is going to be a norm at least for some time to come, at least that's what several experts are predicting. What do you think that bodies or boards like the SSC and the UPSC have to keep in mind going forward?
Well, I think the first message is recognize the message and try to accept its underlying implications. I think the message is quite loud and clear that the manner in which the examination systems have been conducted, they need an overhaul. And I think we have to move towards an online examination system, keeping in mind the mammoth responsibilities of holding examination for 500,000 students across the country in different centers. There is no reason, if a graduate record examination can be held through an online format, why the UPSC civil services examination, at least the written part, cannot be conducted through an online system with the use of artificial intelligence that will act as invigilators. The GRE system, the College Board, the US, they hold this graduate record examination system completely in an online format, wherein you can actually sit at home and take those exams. And the job of the invigilation is performed by the artificial intelligence that is embedded in the online examination program. So there is no reason to think ahead, that we should not think ahead, and we should actually examine the possibility, if not this year, this is a too short a target, but probably even if the pandemic's impact lasts for a year or two, as we did see the Spanish flu impact was for 2 years. So there is no reason to believe that COVID-19 will give us up in next 6 months. It may stay with us, and therefore we need to draw the right lessons and make sure that examine the possibility of holding online examination of competitive services like the civil services, maybe from next year, and see how we can embrace technology and see the loopholes can be plugged.
Okay, all right. So since we're talking about online examinations, Mr. Tripathi, let me bring you into the picture here. Do you believe that, when we are conducting exams like the magnitude of the, and the scale of SSC examinations and UPSC examinations, Do we have the kind of wherewithal to ensure that we shift all of this when lakhs of students are appearing for these examinations to the online form?
You see, it is not impossible. It can be done. But as Mr. Bhattacharya has pointed out, it will need time. It will require training of our people who are conducting the exams, and also some modules, so that the students can also become familiar with this kind of exam. So it cannot be done overnight. It will take maybe 2 years or maybe even 3 years, but it is worth pursuing. And in the beginning, I suggest that the general type of exam, like the prelims, where everybody has to give the same exam, same papers, and the system has to be interactive. Like we have GMAT, SAT, and others, which are interactive, and so that kind of situation can be brought in. And I think our National Testing Agency, CBSE, and our JEE and NEET, they should all start working towards it. It will bring in efficiency, and it has proved very successful in US and Europe. So we have problems that our people are. As Mr. Bhattacharya has pointed out, that AI can deal with the invigilation matter. That is the issue, how to ensure that somebody else is not helping the student when he is sitting on the computer and answering questions. So that perhaps some mechanism has to be found out, and it can be done, but it will take time. It will require training of our people who are organizing the exam, also the teachers, what kind of questions. Then a lot of system analysts and planners of computers who will use those questions in the question bank, because not necessary that the same question comes to everybody who's taking the exam. The bank throws up questions, and then you have to immediately answer them. So they have to be moderated also, so that nobody gets very difficult question and other person gets very easy question. But it can be done. It has been done for SAT, GMAT, and others, where of course the numbers are not so large as our numbers, but they are also fairly large. They are also in hundreds of thousands, because people from all over the world appear. So it can be done. I think the ministry is concerned, because there is not only one ministry, but CBSE, National Testing Agency, and those conducting NEET and JEE, they should start. And then the civil services, UPSC is generally very conservative, so UPSC may join later. But the HRD concerned ministries who are more familiar with the computer-aided system, they should start first.
And since we are here, Mr. Tripathi, also a word on the kind of infrastructure that is needed as well, because traditionally we've been infamous really for having our servers crash. We've seen that happening on the railway platforms and so on and so forth. So that is something that we have to keep in mind as well.
Yes. And that is why the exam, SAT and GMAT, etc., it is not necessary that everybody takes on the same day, or if something, some mishap takes place on that day, then you are barred from taking again. You can take it again after some time, maybe a month or maybe a few weeks.
Okay, yes, Mr. Bhattacharya, I can see you putting up your hand. Yeah.
Add to what Mr. Tripathi beautifully explained is that artificial intelligence can be used also to test a candidate's competence level depending on the way he's answered the previous questions. If the candidate answers the previous question at a certain level, his next question that he is thrown up from the bank that he referred to would be of a higher caliber, which if he can answer, he will get a different kind of marks. It will be testing his competence in a far more dynamic way. So therefore, I agree that it will require a lot of preparation, but I think this COVID-19 is an opportunity for us to explore this online examination system, to bring out the best in our students. And also remember, we take pride in being a digital India campaign, and I think this could be one of the major goals of Digital India, to convert our examination system into online exercises.
Okay, all right. Mr. Ravindran has been patiently listening to the other two panelists as well. Your thoughts, Mr. Ravindran, on this particular issue, because you so closely deal with several of these aspirants and these students, what then happens to the coaching centers, and what happens to places like Kota, to Rajendra Nagar, Mukherjee Nagar, and so on and so forth?
Well, already most of the coaching institutes are conducting their test series online. It's not something quite new to them. However, that this year I was told that more than 9 lakh students have applied for the prelim exam. And in a couple of years, it is definitely going to cross 1 million mark. And it is going to be a stupendous task on the part of the UPSC to conduct the exam online. But however, the point is, if the election commission can conduct the elections to the Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies electronically, why can't the UPSC conduct it? It will be a kind of miniature replica of the electronic voting machines, which are standalone machines. Maybe we can follow a different model to begin with before we shift over to what is internationally followed. A standalone question paper that is loaded to a computer be provided to the students who can answer the questions in the examination centers to begin with before we switch over to most modern systems. This is my view.
Okay, and as far as innovation is at the coaching institutes level is concerned, what is it that you're thinking of? Because very clearly, like I mentioned earlier in the program as well, social distancing is going to be a norm for some time to come. So how do you ensure that you take that forward?
Well, I don't know whether the online examination for the competitive exams can be answered by the students from home. Even then, I believe that they have to go to a center, examination center, from where they can answer online. I don't know whether the system can be made so foolproof that there will be no fraud committed by the students if they are allowed to answer the questions online from home. There have been instances where even from school centers monitored and invigilated by the UPSC, there had been instances of malpractices.
All right, so this is something that needs to be taken care of as well. At the end of the day, when we are having such coveted examinations, we don't want to see any kind of malpractice in place. So we need to have a proper system in place. All right, taking the discussion forward now, Mr. Bhattacharya, what happens, at the end of the day as far as the recruitment cycle is concerned? Now, that is another aspect that I want to touch upon and talk about as well, because when everything gets postponed, so the recruitment cycle also is likely to take a hit, and it's not a very pleasant thing to talk about or to hear of at a time when we know that the economy is going to be bad and there are going to be several job losses on the whole as well.
Well, I don't know to what extent the recruitment cycle this year will be adversely affected, because what I can make out, and Mr. Tripathi will be a better person to address this question, my understanding is as of now, there is no postponement in the September 2020 examination schedule. There is some postponement in the personality interviews tests that had not been completed, so they had been postponed. And now we are seeing that the preliminary examinations may have to be postponed. My sense is that even if they are postponed to, let us say, to June end or even July, that does not stop the 2020 main examinations to be held in September or maybe in October. So in a worst case scenario, we probably will see a delay of a month or two, in other words, hiring about 700 civil servants this year, it will not be such a big challenge or a big casualty of sorts if there is a delay of 1 month in that cycle. So I don't see much of an issue. But I think there is a challenge that the coaching institutions like Mr. Ravindran's will have to face because if the COVID-like situation continues, how will they teach their students who are going to take the mains examination from September? Or what kind of online courses can they switch over to? So I think while the challenge for the government in getting a fresh batch of students to work in the government is fairly limited, but for the challenge for the coaching institutes to train these students for the written examinations at a time when there is so much of disruption, that will probably be a challenge. And I'm sure Mr. Ravindran can talk a lot more about what they are planning to do. But what I understand, Frank, is that there are a large number of coaching institutes which are actually looking for a new model. And in that new model, the fact that you have a real estate, a place of where you can hold your classes is not necessarily an asset, but can well be a liability. So I think the business model of coaching institutes may undergo some change if this situation continues for a longer period.
All right, Mr. Ravindran, this is where I'd like to bring you in. I mean, let me take the point that Mr. Bhattacharya is
Yes.
making forward with you. So, how does all of this upset your plans as a coaching institute? And also, are you working on a new model, keeping all of this in mind?
Well, we are getting ready to extend the answer writing practice, which is the main form of coaching post prelim exam, to be conducted online. So this is what we have been planning to. If the prelim exam is going to be held in June or July, and we can immediately start the online program, though it will have to be restricted in a way this year. But I hope that since there are only fewer number of candidates taking the main examination, we'll be able to manage the issue by working harder and longer.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Tripathi, the other aspect that Mr. Bhattacharya raised, let me take that up with you now. This issue of, let's not forget, let's focus now on the UPSC. Of course, the SSC also has postponed several exams. Several premier state level exams have now been pushed forward. So, it still remains to be seen what happens there. If you focus on the UPSC now for the next couple of minutes, it first has to complete the personality tests that are remaining from the from the present cycle. Then it has to conduct the preliminary examinations, Mr. Tripathi, and then the mains, and then the personality test once again for the new batch. So how does all of this work? I mean, because this is unprecedented. This is something that we've not seen. So it's new for all of us too. So if you can, care to make a guess. Let Mr. Tripathi answer. Mr. Ravindran, let Mr. Tripathi answer. I'll come back to you. Yes, Mr. Tripathi.
Okay.
You see, there are two years processes are getting intertwined. So we have personality test of last year's exam, which is yet to be completed, and results then to be declared. So the students, and the people who have taken the exam, they would not know when they are preparing for exam this year, whether if they have appeared last year also, whether they are going to be selected or not selected. So that would be one problem with the candidate. The problem with the organizers will be that, of course, the personality test, whenever it gets completed, thereafter results declaration does not take much time. They can declare, but of course there will be delay. The delay of maybe 1 month or 2 months or even 3 months, one can live with. The governments can live with, and they can manage. But the prelim exam this year and then the written test, normally there used to be a gap between the prelim exam, the declaration of results of prelim exam, because I think only about 25% would go for the main exam. That gap this year, I am afraid, will get reduced. And then those students, those candidates who would be appearing in the main exam and the coaching centers, because the main papers, the optional papers are in the main exam. So preparation for those papers, the time will be very short. And I want to point out one other factor, which is not a very welcome factor. That is, of course, coaching institutes are very important for candidates. I find that many candidates, when I used to be on the interview board for IAS and other exams some years ago, many bright students of engineering, medicine, mathematics, science, etc., used to take papers like psychology, geography, public administration, sociology, which they had never studied. So 5 years of university education was going waste, and in 2-3 months or maybe 6 months of coaching, they would get ready to take exam in those papers and do reasonably well and get selected. So I think this mismatch between your academics, your real higher education academics, and coaching and the paper setting and the examination result this mismatch should also go away slowly, because what needs to be tested is your understanding of the subject and knowledge of the subject, not merely preparing for the exam and preparing a few selected questions, and possibly for some of those questions come in the exam and then do well. So that is also need to be looked at.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Bhattacharya. So what's the best way forward?
Well, I think the best way forward is that we have to recognize that COVID-19 has created a crisis. And this crisis is not just for our health system or for the Indian economy, but also for our recruitment system in the government. And as all crises provide an opportunity, and that opportunity must be grabbed with both hands. And to my mind, that opportunity is to reform the examination system with greater use of technology and try to see in what way the advantages of online examination can be morphed into the kind of system that we want to create to test the ability of our future civil servants.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Ravindran, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on the best way forward.
Well, the UPSC generally gives 4 months time for the candidates to prepare and take the main examination after the conclusion of the preliminary test. Even this 4-month period is in a way is short for the students to get ready for an examination of mammoth size as the main examination is. And I don't think that the UPSC will try to reduce the time period from 4 months, because it will be quite unfair for the candidates. They cannot just take a gamble in taking the main examination by selectively studying if the time period given for them to take the main examination is considerably reduced. So there can be a delay. If the prelim exam is delayed by a couple of months, the main examination can also be delayed by a couple of months, and the interview can be delayed by a month or so later in 2021, and still the results can be announced by July 2021, enabling the candidates to go to Missouri for their basic foundation course in August 2021. So that the cycle can be completed within the period, though with little bit of extension. I don't think that the UPSC will have to be unnecessarily advance the main examination. It may not be necessary, in my opinion. So because of this, I think that the regular cycle can be followed without much problem. The main problem is in holding the prelim exam, not the main examination, because the number of candidates who take the main examination are not more, just about 10,000 or so.
Sure. Okay. So there are challenges really, but there is clearly a loss of time, but all this can be made up in the course of the next year and a few months as well.